Oh, it's got preparing to live stream the meeting. The anticipation builds as we see the line
Technology
slowly make its way.
Technology is not our friends today.
Looks like I think we got the technology worked out. We are live. The red light is on as we are here to break down the fallout from TakeOver 30. It is the Next Level Wrestling Review. It is myself, Dr. Ted McNaylor, joined alongside Young Grasshopper Colin here as we look all over the fallout from last night's show. Breezango won the tag team titles. Karrion Kross had to relinquish the NXT Championship. Wade Barrett makes his return and a whole lot more, and this is the best expert analysis you can find of NXT online. We're going to talk about all of it here on the Next Level Wrestling Review. Colin, how are you doing this morning, my friend?
Watashi wa waisong Colin des. Hajime masho, Dr. Ted-san. Let's get this started. That's a little Japanese there to start the show. Big Ray used to teach everybody a little bit of Spanish with lucha. Would teach you guys a little bit of Japanese here. I actually just said, hi, my name's Colin. Nice to meet you. Let's begin. I'm excited, Ted. We had a great takeover. We saw Keith Lee lose his title and move up to the main roster. We saw Damian Priest ascend the ladder, and the Archer takes down that North American Championship. And this episode of NXT was very, very exciting, Dr. Ted. I was looking forward to this initial reign of Karrion Kross's, but unfortunately we had a little bit of bad news after his match came out with a separated shoulder. And Ted, this just seems like it just happens to the good ones. We had Finn Balor. He won the Universal Championship. First match, he gets injured and has to relinquish it to never touch or see that title ever again. And then we get Karrion Kross here, separated shoulder. He comes out. Very nice presentation the way they did this. They had Scarlett Bordeaux do the whole entrance, him just popping up holding the title, but unfortunately due to his separated shoulder he relinquishes the title to start the show. The wrestling gods just hate me, Dr. Ted. I just feel like they have it out for me. They don't want me to have a champion that I like holding a title that I want this champion to just hold and see do great things with this title. Ted, I'm just very forlorn today.
Colin, what can we do to perk up your mood here? I feel like this really bums you out, man. I feel bad.
You know what really might make me feel better, Dr. Ted? If we get a 4-man fatal 4-way or something like that later on, that might make me feel great. Well, that might.
The wrestling gods may be smiling upon you, Colin. As we'll get into that soon enough. But I think your spirits may certainly be lifted, and I won't need a bottle of barbecue sauce to do it, which is normally the way we live spirits around here in Kentucky. Well, there's other spirits that we sometimes utilize as well, but
got a little bourbon in there.
It's a different show. Which by the way, I will say that I do finally have in the can the drinking show, and actually on the Monday locker room I promised I was going to deliver it in the afternoon, and I got an impassioned email from K-Bob, one of our loyal listeners, and he implored me not to release it unless I felt it was absolutely ready to go, and I said, you know what, so what I'm going to do is actually go back in there. So we break down, I don't know if you're familiar with Blanton's bourbon, but it's kind of, at least nowadays, it's a harder to find bourbon, but it's a pretty solid one. But what I'm going to do is actually go back and break down a little bit of the history of Blanton's bourbon and give a little more background on it, something I think people might be interested if you're interested in learning more about that kind of stuff. But granted, we aren't here to talk about bourbon. We're here to talk about wrestling. And so, Colin, I think your dreams may just come true today.
They are. But first, Dr. Ted, we've got a little bit of homework. This wasn't a massive homework project.
It wasn't, but I'd say it was a very significant one. It was one certainly that it enveloped a lot here. Really, as we're talking some major moves here, major business being done.
Well, and the homework that you gave us was to take an NXT star, whether they are a heel or a face, and then you're going to take them and you're going to turn them from heel to a face, or from a face to a heel. And Dr. Ted, I chose Drake Maverick for my wrestler. I think that, yeah, I would like to see, Drake, he's been this ultimate baby face. We started with the passionate, like, I'm losing my job, promo that really got the fans behind him. He made it to the finals only to lose the title to, that shot at to Santos. To have this little bit of a storyline that we had with Legado del Fantasma to start this off, and now we haven't really seen Drake doing much. And he had a match tonight. Last week he had a match too where he got beat down by the Undisputed Era while he was wrestling Killian Dane. And again, with him getting beaten up, I could see him getting frustrated, getting tired of just things not going his way. Breezango was there to help him. Now they've gone off to go help switch Swerve, and that could get to his head a little bit. I'm watching my friends leave. Now I'm just, I'm here by myself. I'm getting beat down. Now, he gets a little bit of an edge. Now maybe he picks up a weapon, and it's Drake Maverick with a kendo stick or Drake Maverick with a chair. And he's just going after everybody because he's tired of people coming at him. So now he's going to turn the tables and he's going to be the one coming after people. And we're going to see Drake Maverick go from this like sad, woe is me to picking his pants up and tying his belt and being the one that says, you know what, I'm not taking this anymore. I am not standing for this. I am going to come out here and I am going to just take everyone out. And we see Drake just interjecting himself into matches here and there and just taking it to people with whatever he's got. Almost like Retribution is kind of coming out on Mondays and Fridays and just taking it to the roster.
But you're saying he would be a one-man wrecking crew, basically?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, because now he's lost his friends. We've seen Swerve and Breezango go off to do their own thing. Breezango's champions now after TakeOver. That he kind of feels slighted that his friends aren't there and that he's constantly getting beaten down. Like UE came and beat him down. I'm more than this. I used to be Rockstar Spud, damn it. Like, just him just taking a hold of what he used to be and everything.
Yeah. Well, probably not name dropping Rockstar Spud.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I used to be a rock star, damn it. Like something of that nature that lets you kind of hint back to what he used to be.
So would you be making him the top heel of the company in this role?
No, I don't think Drake could necessarily. I think for that cruiserweight title, maybe to call some distraction in that mid to lower card. Because I feel like with that main card stuff, I don't know if he could fit in with what they're trying to tell with this story that they're going to have starting up for the main card.
Or at least so here's the thing. I would say if you are going to elevate him up the card, certainly he would need to get a heater at some point or some muscle, if you will.
Killian Dane would fit in perfectly for that.
That's exactly who I was going to bring up, especially since they've kind of alluded to, we saw, as we'll talk about later in the show, Drake Maverick extending a hand to Killian Dane and Killian Dane responding in kind with knocking his ass right down. But it doesn't mean that they can't work into some kind of self-respect later, after a while, because we've seen Killian Dane, at least on a couple episodes. Now, granted, the one, there was a commercial break going on, but we've seen a couple times Killian Dane has left Maverick laying, but Maverick always is the consummate babyface, always coming back for more. And I can see after a while, having some kind of story where Killian Dane's like, you know what, I respect that, and they kind of foster more of that relationship from there. And then something like the idea you pitched, he could work his way further up the ladder because now he has an equalizer. That's the one thing I was going to say. If he's going up against these really big guys and attacking them, say like Damian Priest or Bronson Reed or Killer Kross, that's where I feel like, unfortunately, even with a chair, I feel like after a while, he's going to be sought out and they're going to, whoop his ass unless he has someone behind him to heal. But I like the idea because certainly he can turn up that intensity when he wants to and when he needs to, as we see before with him. So I like that pick, Colin. I think certainly that would be a very strong turn for Drake Maverick, especially since it seems right now, I mean, he's doing a really good job playing the consummate babyface, and that allowed him to, have a good comeback story into NXT, but he really hasn't been able to gain that momentum ever since the night Triple H came out and awarded him that contract. He's just kind of shown up as a fiery babyface who winds up in situations where he gets his ass kicked. So at some point, potentially, if we're planning on going further with him, and I would hope that they are, considering that they re-signed him, I think doing something like that would give some new life into him and put another credible threat on the roster, especially with I especially like the idea of putting Killian Dane with them, because I think you could do a lot more with that. Not to mention Killian Dane really isn't doing much right now either. And I think that would be an interesting pair. And
Killian's gotten some serious shape, so it looks like he's working on his body to be more presentable for TV from what he was with Insanity and those guys. But yeah, I think we could see something like that. I mean, they alluded something like that in the show, and even Drake kind of showed a little bit of an edge in his match later on, as we'll kind of talk about. But are you ready for these emails? Because, unfortunately, I feel like the spirit of Hans has inserted himself into Joe Atherton, and old Athers writes these long emails, and then you and I get these short 3-word emails from Hans, like we don't get the conspiracy horseman email Hans. That's all right. And Dr. Ted, before we get into these emails, I do have to say I enjoyed the fanciness that you brought to the Impact Attack this week. It was great. And then I saw I think was that Santino posted a picture
of
him being fancy too. So I mean, it's catching on. I think the fancy revolution everybody's getting fancy. I thoroughly enjoyed that. I almost put on a tie today to get fancy here with you today, Dr. Ted, but I digress.
I appreciate that. Well, it's good to bring up for those that don't, maybe are just tuning in for this show for the NXT report and also want a place where you watch the Impact review. We do that on Wednesday mornings, and it's a slightly different show. I always try to bring something a little bit different to each of the shows I do here at Homemade Media Group. So on Wednesdays, I always try to come up with some kind of ridiculous character that could relate to someone else that's currently on the Impact roster as an ongoing joke or rib for me to try to get signed onto the Impact roster, which it's just a fun little game that we play every week. So last night with Diana Perazzo being the virtuosa and winning or retaining the Impact Women's Championship, I thought it was only appropriate to be the fanciest of fancy, as I was Theodore Fancy on yesterday's episode. It was a lot of fun. So if you enjoy Impact and want the best review show that you can find online as well, the Impact Attack is certainly for you every Wednesday. But I digress. As we were talking about, Colin, let's get into these homework assignments. I'm excited. We might have to break these down segment by segment if they're getting into the details again, which I'm okay with. We'll break it down.
All right, we got Dear Ted and Colin. I've been really racking my brains on this one, and this email comes from our good friend Joe Atherton across the pond, and this is the best I can come up with. Subject: Timothy Thatcher, journey from a heel to the face.
Wow. Okay, I can see that.
Months 1 through 3, the vignettes of his Thatcher's can school continue, getting sick pleasure from stretching his students. In matches, he carries on his aggressive streak. He goes on a winning streak, beating faces like Tyler Breeze, Bronson Reed, Ciampa. Gets a North American shot at Damian Priest, in which he loses a hard-fought contest. After the match, he looks furious, but instead of attacking Priest, he reluctantly shakes his hand and nods and leaves. Months 3 through 5. At this stage, Tim is neither face or heel. His style hasn't changed. Aggressive, vicious technician. He has battles with both faces and heels. He wins some, he loses some, but the majority of his losses are against heels. In the locker room, after getting cheated in a match where Cameron Grimes had a handful of tights, his old stablemate from Germany, Walter, comes to talk to him. They greet each other like old friends. Walter says people like Grimes don't respect the sport of wrestling. There's always a place in Imperium for him. Think it over. Month 6, all happening over a 4-week period. Tim has a rematch with Grimes. Barthel and Eichner come out on the ramp, distract Tim, who gets rolled up again. Grimes goes to hightail it out of there, but cut off by the two Imperium labs, beaten down.
All right. Sorry, I'm making sure. I just want to follow along. So this is a tag match that's happening this week.
It looks like Tim's is having a rematch with Grimes, and Barthel and Fabian Eichner come out, distract Thatcher.
Gotcha. Okay, it's a singles match.
Grimes gets the win again, but then it looks like both Imperium and beat up both Grimes and Thatcher.
Okay.
Let's see. Actually, he's not bothered about Grimes. He's more bothered they cost him the match. Grimes crawls away to the back as an argument carries on. Walter comes out and acts as a peacemaker. The next week, Walter apologizes for the interruption. It was a scouting mission, not a distraction. They want Tim to join them, like it was in the old days in Germany. Tim appreciates it, but he doesn't play well with others, and he's quite happy on his own. Tells Walter to keep his boys out of his way, as he's in a number one contenders match for the NXT title match in 2 weeks' time. The number one contender match is between Timothy Thatcher, Johnny Gargano, Cameron Grimes, and Dominik Dijakovic. Tim is about to win when he's jumped by all of Imperium as they brawl to the back, costing him the match. So it looks like they're setting up, for those that have watched Imperium in British and European wrestling, it seems like they're using the experience they have with each other here for Imperium we're going to get the face turn off of him beating up Imperium.
Gotcha.
Month number 7, the turn. Barthel and Eichner are defending their tag titles when Thatcher makes a run in and destroys them both. Wolf comes out to make the save, gets destroyed too. Walter heads down the ramp. Tim holds the ropes open, but Walter backs off until recovering members of Imperium all jump in, leading to a 4-man beatdown. The next week, Walter says that Tim has changed, gone soft. We gave you the opportunity to join us. If you're not with us, you're against us. Tim says he wants Walter and wants a shot at the NXT UK Championship. Says he'll give him his shot if he can beat Wolf. He beats Wolf with a vicious ankle lock and is jumped on the bill by Eichner. Walter forgot to tell him it was a gauntlet match and he had to beat Eichner and then Barthel if he wanted to share the same ring as him. He struggles to win over Eichner, can barely stand when it comes to his match with Barthel, and is cruelly denied his shot with Walter. The next week, Walter is defending his UK championship against a returning Pete Dunne. With the ref knocked out, Imperium look to attack Dunne, but Thatcher runs them off with a steel chair. Pete ends up winning the title, and Walter has suffered his first singles loss in WWE. Walter cuts a promo on Tim on how the interference cost him his championship. He doesn't understand him. He thought he wanted his title. Tim comes out, tells Walter it was never about the title. Titles mean next to nothing in comparison to knowing who the better man is. In Germany, it was us two, Tim and Walter. The best in WXW. You were always the man, and we considered a close second. I want to know. I want the world to know. And most importantly, I want you to know I am the better man. They have a match. Tim survives the attempted shenanigans from Imperium and finally proves himself to beating his former mentor, teammate, and friend clean in the middle of the ring. Athers.
Wow. I'm going to turn the tables, Colin, since you read through that. I'm going to give you the first crack on what you think about that.
Well, I like it. I feel like there's like a lot that has to come together for something like this to happen. We've only seen 2 of the members of Imperium lately. There's a lot there for him to work his way up into the NXT title scene. I like the booking. I feel like there's just a lot going on with the booking, Ted, that's kind of, some of it's hard to digest. I feel like you could probably make things a little easier, tie some
and that's the thing. And here's the thing is, I'm not discounting. I love when you can really put a lot of detail into an idea, as long as, despite it being detailed, it still has to be easily digestible by the viewer and understandable. As soon you should be able to describe basically an an idea. Now this granted, he went week to week, and so each had its own set of ideas, but you should really be able, in one or two sentences, be able to either describe, a wrestler or an idea. And if you have to go beyond that, then typically a lot of times it means it's too much, because your viewer has to be able to easily digest what they're watching. That being said, there are some things I really like here. One, if done correctly, here's the thing, is a big part of this is you would have to find a way to educate the viewers on all this history, and that would be hard to do. Now, granted, you could certainly do pre-tapes here and there and slowly work up, and that's where, if you were to do this slowly over time in simpler, digestible parts, I think you could. Between now and the end of the year, I think that would be too quickly. But if you were to take some of his ideas and stretch them out over, say, 6 months to a year, then I think you could work into something there, because then you could slowly educate the fans on these relationships as they work within each other. And it does good business in the sense that it helps to elevate the NXT UK brand, which I feel like sometimes is like, it's almost sometimes I feel like an afterthought, and that I don't hear about it too much. Now, maybe that part of that simply because of COVID and pandemic, and they aren't doing much right now. But that being said, I think at least it would help to elevate, hey, don't forget, fans, we have NXT UK. If you need more wrestling, then they have a great program there for you to watch as well on the network. So I think that does good business there. And I think if they were to establish those relationships, it could work. Like I visualize something like they try to get Timothy Thatcher into Imperium and he's resistant. And then finally you have the moment where he comes out with the jacket, and I just feel like that would be such a weird look of, you have, all the rest of Imperium look pretty prim and proper, but you have Timothy Thatcher with his messed up hair and his snaggletooth. And as it looks like he's about to join him, he slides a pipe out from underneath his jacket and smashes Walter in the side of the head, and then takes out the rest of Imperium and then starts stretching one of them. You know what I mean? Something like that, I think would be like, that would be a big moment for Timothy Thatcher. And I'm actually glad he picked Timothy Thatcher, because I already had in the back of my head, based on what we saw on the show tonight, they're putting him in a babyface position. They're not necessarily turning him babyface. I like this, because this is going to be a good example of, you can have situations where you don't necessarily have, this is the babyface, this is the heel. It's really about situational situations, and you have an antagonist or protagonist. And what happened on tonight's show was a perfect example of that. And Timothy Thatcher, he plays the character well to where he can be placed in a babyface or heel role and still be effective, I believe. And I'll get into exactly why I believe that as we get into that segment. But that being said, I don't want Athers to feel like I'm ripping out. I just think for the level of education that's needed for the audience, it's again, I don't think the ideas are necessarily bad, but it would take a bit longer for that to play out, in my opinion. But otherwise, I think it's a good pick, and I think the ideas there can work if they have the due diligence to be able to explain to the audience these relationships.
Well, we appreciate the email, Athers, and if you guys enjoy Athers' takes, make sure you listen to him and Money McIver over there on the Smack Attack on Saturdays as they review SmackDown.
That's right.
First episode was really good.
Yeah, it's our UK contingent here at the Hamid Media Group.
Definitely, for sure. Now I thinking about this and his booking, Ted. They did something similar when Undisputed Era was first kind of forming, and it was just Cole, Fish, and O'Reilly. Roddy Strong was a babyface, and they were trying to push to get Roddy to join the Undisputed Era, and a lot of people thought that they were going to do he's going to join and then turn on him. But they've kept him in the Undisputed Era because, I mean, everybody saw Roddy as this huge baby face. There's no way he could join Undisputed Era. And he, of course, has stuck it out and joined Undisputed Era. So it seems like it's similar booking, like in the sense of where it's like an old faction and friends trying to get someone to join them. But I mean, as big as Imperium is in the UK, and that might be something that could sell in the UK. Like like you said, if it was an NXT UK, something there that they wouldn't necessarily have to explain the background, so to speak, to the American audience. That one could be something big over there in the UK. Yeah,
certainly you could do it that way too. And I like hearing, because I didn't realize that they did the thing with Roderick Strong, but I like that because, again, you're old time fans, and that's where you have to book as if people are watching for the first time, but you still have to put in those little nuances that reward longtime fans. And that's a difficult balance to do sometimes on television. So that's where something like that, as long as you educate the audience, and we're do that on NXT, then the longtime fans are gonna be like, hey, this is like what happened with Roderick Strong, except this time we don't see the same set, like they feel like this is going down that same path, but then when we see it doesn't work out, then that actually is even more meaningful because those longtime fans are like, okay, this is a different take on a similar angle. And I'm always fine with that. If you can find a different take or a different turn on something that's intriguing, that causes now, granted, I think probably some longtime fans will be like, oh, I wonder if they're going to do the same thing or if it's going to be different. But you know what I mean? At least it builds that intrigue over what is going to be the end result of this feud that is reminiscent of things that we've seen before in the past.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Now, our next email comes from our good friend Hans. Hey, all you cool cats and kittens. I hate to go Arn Anderson and toot my own horn, but toot fucking toot. Did y'all hear the Friday veteran locker room? Did you hear Lord Stevie Christ say the same thing as me in regards to Undisputed Era turning on Adam Cole and riding with McAfee? I did. How about that McAfee match? I had to watch it a second time. It was so damn sweet. I cannot think of a big turn to go into detail. Been a crazy week. My nephew got evacuated and had to take him in. Maybe we can get some extra credit next week so I can get my A back up. GGP's favorite fan, Ya Allah, Iron Patriot.
You know what? Here's the thing. As a professor, as an educator, as a coach, your NXT digital coach, it is my utmost priority that you care about your learning. And Hans, you took the opportunity to still write in to inform me of your situation. And you know what? Because this is the first time it's happened too, I'm willing to give you a pass here because you have shown that you are a dedicated student of the game. You're wanting to participate, and unfortunately, life circumstances do happen sometimes, and I'm very aware that those things happen. So for this week, Hans, you get a pass. You get one, just one.
We got Theodore Fancy on the Impact Attack. We get School Marm Ted here.
School Mom Ted.
it's School Mom Ted here at the Next Level Wrestling Review.
I don't know if I like that nickname sticking, but we're gonna talk after the show, Colin. I don't know if I can go for that.
All right, well, let's hop into this NXT review. And as I kind of stooged off at the top of the show, we started off with Karrion Kross coming out with Scarlett and giving up the title here. He says it changes nothing. Doomsday is still coming for everyone here in NXT. I shed a tear, Dr. Ted. I'm not gonna lie. I was very sad at the start of this show. But things got better. Things definitely got better as the show went on. What were your professional thoughts here on this kind of opening segment? You know, for this promo, was this a good promo that he cut for someone relinquishing the title? Do you think they could have done this segment better? I mean, we've seen so many of these types of segments in recent years, whether it be Daniel Bryan, Finn Balor having to relinquish the title, Keith Lee relinquishing the North American title. I mean, we've had a lot of these lately. Where does this rank in the pantheon of title relinquishment promos?
Well, here's the thing. It's a situation that you hope never has to happen. And unfortunately, it's from a writing standpoint, it's one of those things that it's almost what you have to do. I think Karrion Kross still came out and his presence was just as good as ever. And his promo was good. And he still made it known that he's a threat. Now, that being said, and this is going to be part of the homework, so I don't want to get too into it because I already have some of my thoughts on what I would do from here going forward. But part of it is too, are they going to just have him, disappear for a while and come back, or are they going to have ways for him to still, via, vignettes or promos or whatever, or are they still going to keep him relevant? That's where I'm not sure because, well, honestly, it depends on how long too is he going to be out, because it's certainly going to be much harder to keep him relevant for 6 months than it is to keep him relevant for a few weeks. You know what I mean? So that's the difference there. But I thought as far as segments goes, I mean, I can't say necessarily how it ranks compared to other things. I think really at the end of the day, it is what it is. And as long as you can still impart that passion and that character. It's all about character work with me. If you're still able to deliver the height of what your character would do in that situation, and I feel like this essentially in a sense is necessarily what he would do, then I thought it was fine. Basically, he still put everyone else on notice, and maybe I would have maybe had I don't know if he had a line, but I feel like something along the lines of whoever wins the NXT Championship next, know that time's just ticking for you. But he also kind of implied that too, anyway. So that being said, I guess a roundabout way of saying, I thought this was fine. It was good. As far as what it needed to be. It wasn't the ideal situation, but at the same time, you got to work with what you have. And unfortunately, poor timing on the injury, but hopefully speedy recovery. And at least I'm glad to hear at least that he is going to take the time to rehab properly and work through this. And again, as a physical therapist, doctor of physical therapy, it's always most important, is making sure these wrestlers can prolong their careers. And as I talked about on the Impact Attack, every time you separate a shoulder, it is an increased risk for separating again. So coming back too soon and try. So that's where I'm glad they went ahead and say, you know what, we're just going to take the title off you. And I know Ben and I kind of talked, it had a little bit of a difference in that, he felt he should be kept relevant, but I'm big on the long-term health of these competitors. I want to see Karrion Kross in that ring for a long time to come, or at least as long as he's physically able to, and taking the proper time to rehab and get that shoulder back to stable, be stabilized properly so it doesn't come out of socket again. Is certainly the right thing to do ultimately.
Well, I think there's a certain doctor that might find his way into my homework with some rehab segments here, depending on, I have a gist of what the homework might be there. That you might be making there's a job for you in NXT with these rehab segments. I think you're trying to book here, Dr. Ted. Are you trying to book yourself?
I might be trying to work my way into
here. It sounds like you are. I'm on to you, Dr. Ted. Sneaky. But I agree, because my dad, he had a really bad motorcycle accident, and he has like a long scar on his knee where they did knee surgery, and he didn't go through rehab fully. And to this day, there's times where he's laying on the couch and he can't, like, his leg cramps up, or his knee, he can't bend his knee fully to get up off the couch, and he's just in a bunch of pain because he tells me it's because he didn't do the rehab on it, and had he properly done the rehab, it would be in better condition than what it is. But we had him relinquish.
And that's the thing. After any kind of injury, you have a short period of time where your body's basically trying to repair itself, and with rehab properly within that time window, that's when you can have much better outcomes, versus if scar tissue is already laying down in the body and things aren't aligning back to where they need to be. Because I unfortunately see that all the time in the clinic, where someone come back, I thought this was going to go away. It was 4 or 5 months ago. And it's like, not to say that there are plenty of situations where people can bounce back, but at the same time, there's also plenty of situations where unfortunately we can get better from this point, but we might not ever be able to get you back to what you could have had. But to that point, I actually don't mind that idea, because I've always thought with rehab and working with patients and with athletes that the milestones they hit through rehab, I think if you were to produce that and have short segments of showing the progression of how much closer someone is to getting to 100% and what it really takes, I think that would be a very powerful and emotional story. And I will put it out there, if there is anyone that even just on the side, whether it be with NXT or another company, wants to, I never want anyone to get hurt, but it's also part of the business. And so if someone does have a situation where they're wanting to rehab it and document it and make it kind of an ongoing series, I do think that there's a lot of good drama in there, especially again, as we work towards certain milestones, and you can see the progression, you can see how much closer someone gets. Now, someone like Karrion Kross, I would not do that with, because seeing him doing rehab in a physical therapy clinic, I just think would undermine the character. So, but another wrestler that's just an otherwise, someone that maybe isn't so supernatural as a character, you could certainly show that. And I think it would build a lot of emotion and empathy and caring for that wrestler. So that way, over time, even though they're injured, they're still building empathy with the audience. And by the time they finally come back and make their debut, we've stuck with them through this entire process. And now the people care that much more about seeing them succeed, because they knew what it took for them to get them there. So, and long story, I'm glad you brought that up. It wasn't even something I was thinking about. That is something that I do believe could be a really cool way to keep people relevant, and at the same time also be able to help build them up while they're injured.
Well, I already have a great idea for the Karrion Kross thing on keeping him relevant while also kind of maintaining his character.
I'll go ahead and say it because we're talking, but usually I like to save the homework for the end.
Yeah.
Next week's homework will be this. So originally Ben Hameen had the homework for next week, and his was, how do we keep the title on Karrion Kross while he's injured? Well, obviously that homework, because they took the title off of him. But my question to you is, how can we keep him relevant? Now, bear in mind, I don't know the extent of his injury. I don't know how long he will be out, but let's assume he's going to be out the better part of the next 6 months. So assuming that, hopefully he's not, but at the same time, let's assume he's going to be out the better part of the next 6 months. How do we keep him relevant? And I don't want to just say, have him cut promos every week. If you are going to have him cut promos, I need some business as far as at least the content and or what it's leading towards in regards to the promos. And ultimately, I do want to know what happens upon his return as well. How do you bring him back when he is healthy? So how do you keep him relevant while he's out? How do you bring him back? That's your homework for next week. You can send in your homework, of course, to it is nextlevelwrestlingreview@gmail.com.
Yeah, the juice is already flowing in here. I've already got some great ideas for what we can do for next week with Karrion Kross. But next week we have to pay our respects to the ring, Dr. Ted, as it is time. It is time for Imperium.
As we
I'm trying to be respectful here and do the pose and give it a little time for production, because I like to throw the Imperium theme song in there. So those of us watching on YouTube are like, what are they doing? But we've got Breezango versus the champions, Imperium, here for the NXT Tag Team Championship. Now, going into this match,
let me ask though, before we get into this, Colin, are you trying to imply that you are the official voice of Imperium?
For here on the internet,
I
am taking that mantle, Dr. Ted, and I will be the official voice of Imperium.
Heard it here, folks. The digital voice of Imperium, the man himself, Colin Weissall. Congratulations, by the way, a huge honor.
Oh, thank you.
Listen, people are already screaming for it. They love it.
My 7-month-old is also a member of Imperium, and
apparently.
Yes, he loves this segment as well. Unfortunately, he's going to be sad when we get to the end of it, because Breezango walks away with the championship here, Dr. Ted. Now, going into this, I honestly thought that we were going to see some kind of shenanigans from Legado del Fantasma to come out here and keep these guys from winning the championship. But then, Ted, I remember when we first started doing this together and Legado del Fantasma first became a thing, and I said that they were going to find some way to get the tag titles put into this little feud that they're having, and by golly, they did it, because now Breezango has the tag titles and they're still in this feud with Legado del Fantasma. I don't know where they were going with Imperium losing the titles here unless they're not going to be able to get Walter and a lot of those guys over here to the United States for a while, especially with kind of how it's still pretty bad with COVID over there in Europe. But I was very shocked and surprised to see Breezango win in the way that they did. Now, Dr. Ted, I was very saddened, because out of this match, I expected them to have a hot tag. And there was not a hot tag, Dr. Ted.
The hot tag challenge still stands. We did not have a hot tag. And for those tuning in for the first time, I've challenged everyone in the world of wrestling. I don't care what company. I want to see one hot tag in 2020. Now, that being said, Colin, I did actually hear from one of our listeners. It was 40 American White Mare on.
Oh, that's Hans. That's Hans.
Oh, it's Hans? Okay, yeah. Hans was telling me on Twitter, apparently FDR had a hot tag a couple weeks ago on AEW. Now, I have not confirmed that, so I at some point I need to find the time to sit down, figure out what match it was, because they've had a few matches, and determine whether or not it was truly a hot tag. But if so, I will sing their praises and I will announce them as our hot tag challenge winners. But as of yet, I have yet to sit down and watch, so I cannot confirm them as the winners. And if anyone does happen to know exactly what match it was, just that way I don't have to go through a bunch of tape trying to find a hot tag, let me know. But Between now and next week, I will hopefully have an answer for you on if FTR did indeed win the hot tag challenge. But as of now, my eyes have not seen a hot tag in 2020. So I'm still going to say it's out there. I still want to see more. Even if they did it, I want to see more. And if anything, we'll start a count on who can do the most hot tags. I'm very sad to report that it will probably be in the single digits if that does happen, but at least give me one. So hopefully we have our winners, but time will tell. We will see.
Yeah. Well, what were your overall thoughts on this match? Did you feel like the business got done with this match? I mean, was this something that you were expecting when you saw this match kind of booked, ready to, like, you know, did you think that Breezango was going to win? Was this something that you had in your mind? Was this something that you guys would have done? I mean, because it clearly it seems like they're moving these tag titles to that Legado del Fantasma feud. It just seems like that's where that's going to go.
Yeah, and maybe that was just a way of hot-shotting it. I also am not privy to other business decisions. Maybe with Imperium, it has been difficult due to COVID to get them over here. I don't know if they are residing here and staying on a visa, or if they are having to fly back and forth. But certainly if it has to do with them flying back and forth, then I can see right now not being an ideal time to really present them and give them their due diligence as champions. There's the other part, like you said, about wanting to set them up with Legado del Fantasma and the tag titles, which, as we saw later in the show, it seems like they might be going that direction. There's also the possibility that, again, if they weren't able to have Imperium be there as often, having a team like Breezango, who other WWE fans would otherwise recognize as prior main roster talents, and perhaps that's also a way they can help to build up their audience to be able to just have more viewers on Wednesday nights with seeing Breezango as your tag team champions, since they can perhaps assumingly be there more regularly than Imperium. That being said, I was surprised. I thought if I thought this was the first part of maybe a little story or feud between Breezango and Imperium, where Breezango was going to chase for the titles. Maybe they get screwed over somehow, but instead we got the clean victory. And I'll say, from a match perspective, again, I'd hate to take anything away from the talent of all these guys. I think they started off well, but by the end, I'm always going to say, I thought it was just way too fast. They did not take the time to really register. And it's not to say that they could have done most of what they did, but just taking an extra beat. Again, I've talked about this on other shows. It takes the human brain about 5 seconds to really register what's going on. And there are plenty of moments at the end of this match where within a span of 5 seconds, like 3 or 4 different turns would happen. And it was too much. And with the moves looking as crisp as they were, and as athletically, just the showcasing of athletics from these men, and I know the talent that they have. I hate to see them waste so much motion and waste so many bumps when they could get more out of it. And it would have been that much more meaningful if they just would have taken a few more seconds to allow the audience to really register the jeopardy of the baby faces. And yes, there wasn't a hot tag, which would have also made it better, but I also felt at the end, it was just too bing, bang, boom. And it may have been, and that's where, as a worker, it's hard to do, but there are times when you're working and you realize, hey, we're way shorter. We don't have as much time as we thought we did, and we got to go home. And that's where you got to learn to cut. Someone as a heel has to step up and cut shit out and say, we're going to go right to here, and come up with a way to change it on the fly. And that is hard to do, but it's one of those situations where you almost have to. So if it got to the point, if that was the issue where they were running out of time and running short on time, one of the heels needed to cut off and get the word to the baby faces. They were going to go ahead and shotgun to finish and get there quicker so they could have more time to be able to do the things they needed to do for the last bit of it. And that's where a lot of times as a heel, honestly, what I would do is I would lay out the ideal match that assuming, again, for TV, it's different. If it's a live event, I'm all about go out there and just work. Don't even worry about calling shit in the back. On TV, you have to, because you have to make sure you're there for certain spots. And it's hard because you want to make it look, real and natural without making it look overly produced. That being said, that's where a lot of times as a heel, I would talk to the teams we would work and say, here's what we're planning to do. If time gets cut, we're going to go right to this. And that way, if time gets cut, the baby faces already know, okay, time must have got cut. We're going right to this. And the fans don't even know the difference. We know the difference as wrestlers in the ring, but the fans don't necessarily know the difference. And that's where sometimes you do have to take that time when planning a match and say, okay, this is plan B if we run out of time, or plan C if for some reason they get on there, we find out. Because sometimes if like you're later in the show and segments went short, this doesn't happen as often. Usually we're always short on time, but there's also times where people went short and you maybe have an extra 5 minutes, and then it's like, that is easy as a veteran. You can just go out there and work. But also if you're working with guys who maybe are either green or just new to TV, not necessarily green, but being able to work TV versus live is different, and be able to communicate that to your opponent. Say, okay, if we get extra time here, we're going to spend more time here, whether it be in the heat or, we'll shine them up and call moves at the beginning, whatever you might need for the business to get done, whether it's about shining the baby faces or putting heat on the heels. But it's a long-winded way of saying, I feel like I couldn't help but feel like this was a bunch of, as Rip would say, and I say this with all the love with the world for these guys' talent and athletic abilities, they stuck with their pre-planned bullshit. And because of that, it was not as effective as I felt it was. That being said, I thought it was fine. I still think it was an exciting finish, and I think it still did the business, but it would have done better business if they would have slowed down a little bit and taken more time with what they were doing.
Yeah, I definitely feel what you said there about the end being just a bunch of convoluted stuff going on there. I mean, it was just confusing for someone who's just a fan to watch kind of the ending there where, you thought Eichner got hurt, they make the tag, he comes in, and then he just destroys Tyler Breeze like right off with the clothesline. And then they finally get Fandango back in there, and I think this is the first time I've seen a match ended with a double leg drop like that. And that, it looked like the guys were too far out, and he actually kind of landed on their faces with his boots. Have you taken a really terrible leg drop before, like where you're just getting hit with all foot and not necessarily like the crook of the knee and stuff, or the meat of the thigh?
I've been very fortunate in that throughout my career. It's actually a move I always hated to take, and I really haven't had to take them very often. So unfortunately, I haven't been on the wrong. I've been on the wrong end of other moves, certainly, but as far as leg drops, I have been fortunate in that I haven't had any facial contusions from that. But I can't say the same for my tag team partner, who for some reason I feel like he had a few of those. For some reason, he always ended up having to take most of the leg drops and getting hurt with it. And hurt, is relative term. He never really got injured, but more so maybe got a little bit more meat on him than he really wanted. But I've been fortunate that, at least for me, no errant leg drops in my career.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Now, the championship celebration is gonna continue, but this show also has to continue. We go backstage. Timothy Thatcher challenges Damian Priest to a match for Priest's newly won North American Championship. Now, this is kind of what you alluded to with Adler's email, where you kind of see it in the back where he comes and he kind of challenges Priest for that title, and you kind of see where he can play that good guy character with his character. Like you said, the two characters are going to play off of each other. Damian Priest is going to be kind of that badass character, and Thatcher is going to be that hard-nosed, like submission wrestler type. And I feel like they're going to have a good match when they finally go out there. But what were your thoughts on the overall business with this promo in the back?
This you're talking about the Damian Priest, Thatcher.
Damian Priest and Thatcher.
Yes, and This is where I'm glad that Adler's brought this up, because right away I was thinking, as long as Timothy Thatcher is just Timothy Thatcher, it doesn't worry about if he's a babyface or a heel. He can be a versatile worker that really he can do both. In that you have a heel that's getting a bunch of heat, and once no challenger is going to step up to him. Timothy Thatcher's just an ass beater, and him walking out there is still going to get the people excited to see, even if they don't like him. Be like, well, that guy runs his mouth, but we know that guy is an ass beater, and he's going to beat his ass. And so that's where you have a babyface with empathy, and you have Timothy Thatcher in there, and he's grinded on him, and doing what he does, just being himself. Then he gets heat in there too. So that's where I think he's a very versatile worker in this role, and that he's just a brute ass beater. And I like that for him. And I just want to see Timothy Thatcher be Timothy Thatcher, because I think he can be a very versatile person on the roster, and that really he can be put in either a babyface or a heel situation without ever having to change.
Yeah, I like it because he can just, like you said, he's kind of like I know this is kind of like kind of how like a Ken Shamrock or like a Blackman was kind of back in the day, where it's like, like he's just, this guy just wants to kick ass, and either whether you're a good guy, you're a bad guy. No, if he's in the ring with you, he has one mission, and that's to kick your ass regardless. I mean, it's very like old school MMA-ish, like those guys were when they had their gimmicks in the WWE.
And looking at YouTube, Hameen Media Group, the chat room's going there. Someone did bring up a good point here that I didn't think about. They said Thatcher gets a title match after losing to Balor. Sure, makes sense. Or not. Oh, well. Pit fight, anyone? The pit fight, maybe we can get to, but he does have a point. So, and to that end, it's not to say that he can't get a shot. It's how does he work his way into the shot? So that's where this what could have happened here is Thatcher challenging for the title, and Damian Priest, as the consummate heel, just shoves him off and says you could even beat Finn Balor. You don't get you know what I mean? And kind of give Timothy Thatcher a reason to get find a way to motivate Damian Priest. And actually, that would have even been a good opportunity. Well, he could have just kind of laughed it off, but then next week we see Timothy Thatcher, find a way to either jump Damian Priest or just continue to haunt him in a sense, or maybe he's just stalking him backstage or finding opportunities to fuck with him somehow. Although I feel like Timothy Thatcher is the kind of wrestler that just goes after people. So I feel like, okay, you don't want to give me a shot, I'm just going to come and beat your ass every single week until you give me a shot, brother. You know what I mean? And then just wham, that feel like that's his character. And finally, Damian Priest has enough and says, you know what, fine, I accept your challenge. So who was in the chat room that said it? Daniel Price. Actually, that's a very good point, and I wasn't even thinking about that, but that's where you can utilize what has already happened based on what we saw at TakeOver to continue business, because you're right. If based on his loss, he shouldn't necessarily be next in line. But if he can piss off the champion enough to where the champion says, fuck it, all right, I'll give you a damn shot, just quit attacking me every week. There you go. Then we have a reason now for that match to take place versus him just jumping the line because he asked for a shot. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I like that idea of him kind of just giving Priest hell. Another guy who is back to raise hell in NXT is the longtime champion. He claims to be the world's best sports entertainer. We have Tommaso Ciampa making his return against Jake Atlas. Well, it wasn't much of a match as Tommaso Ciampa just runs over Atlas, and then after the match proceeds to just destroy Atlas. He slingshots him under the metal supports under the ring. As they're loading him onto the stretcher, he just DDTs Atlas off the stretcher like a draped DDT off the stretcher. And Atlas just there was one thing I took away. Like, he took that DDT off the stretcher. I mean, I guess with the neck brace, it makes it look more devastating because his neck is stiff and the way he just kind of darted him straight down into the floor. But this, I mean, for Tommaso Ciampa to come back and to be the badass that he was, his entrance with the mask, everything, the beard coming out, the look that he has coming out, the way that he just destroyed Jake Atlas. And then later on, we get his admission into a certain match that we're going to have, that we're going to talk about. They're making him look really strong. I mean, I feel like Tommaso is one of those guys that he doesn't need the belt to be made man because he's done so much for NXT. I feel like this is the return of like NXT's biggest star, and biggest heel. I mean, honestly, he can be a face or a heel depending on the situation, but I feel like the way that he carries himself, he is the biggest heel in NXT, and I'm excited to have him back. I'm excited for what can possibly happen with him and Gargano. Again, their whole blood feud that they have, the matches with him and Balor. I mean, even with Kross getting injured, the match is potentially the match that we could have with Kross and Ciampa whenever they come back. Tommaso Ciampa, what were your thoughts on his comeback? Did they do him justice bringing him back like this? I mean, is this how you would have brought Ciampa back, knowing his backstory and how he is in NXT?
All right, I thought it was good. It was very reminiscent. And this is something, a story people may not know, but to me, it was very reminiscent of how he originally got hired by Ring of Honor way back in the day, because there was a tryout actually for Ring of Honor back when they were working with Jim Cornette, and it was at the Davis Arena in Louisville. and Tommaso happened to be there, and he came in like everyone was wanting to do, your big spots and hitting the, jumping off the ropes, bouncing off, doing their flips and whatnot. And then Tommaso got in there for his tryout and I think he flew in with like a double drop kick and just got vicious out of nowhere. And it was like, holy shit, this was unlike any of the other tryout matches that we saw. And that viciousness is just what really was like, okay. And he was hired right after that, and the rest is history. And this was very reminiscent of that intensity. And so I feel like he went back to his roots. I'm hopeful that we also see a different, maybe working style of Tommaso, because he certainly is one that puts himself in physically compromising positions, and it makes me really worried for his physical health. So I'm hopeful maybe he's going to revert back to, a more kind of vicious ground and pound type of style, and
kind of like what Stone Cold used to
in a
do.
way,
like,
yeah. What else do you need? I mean, look, exactly. Someone right there, someone like a Stone Cold, just, he's just unlike Timothy Thatcher. I mean, or like Timothy Thatcher, he's an ass beater, but he's someone that is not as methodical. He's just he's a little unhinged. And I haven't seen it before. He may have already worn this in the past. I like the mask thing he came out with, because I felt like that also was like a symbol of a different side of Tommaso, maybe that we haven't seen before. So I thought it was very good. This was a very effective way to bring him back, and he's now an important character. The thing that I worry about is we're going to go from having this great return to seeing him in a 60-minute match next week. And I feel like it just happens to be the circumstances, but I also feel that's a little soon to put him in a prolonged match, simply because I'm very big on, if you were to have Tommaso start running through people in a similar manner for the next few weeks, I feel like that's going to be much more meaningful than seeing him in that 60-minute Iron Man match next week. And if he ends up going into that match next week and wins, where does he go from there? I feel like you're just shotgun from A to Z instead of telling that story in between. So that's the one thing that I'd say I worry about. I will reserve my judgment for when I actually see it, and we'll talk about the match itself here in a little bit. But as far as this segment right here, making his return, it was a powerful return, and it was something that I think viewers were just flipping through the channel that we'll find out with the ratings report. But I feel like it's something that people potentially would sound like, holy shit, what the hell's going on here? You know what I mean? This was good, and it was, I think, Tommaso at his best.
In an era of wrestling where it's all about the flips and the comebacks and everything, I think it would be refreshing for Tommaso to be the punch and kick guy. I heard Lawler was talking about Kamala and kind of the stuff that they did back in the day, and Lawler made a comment about how most of him and the territory guys, like, all their stories that they told in the ring were punches, kicks. They might throw a pile driver or a DDT in there here and there, but it was mostly just kicking a guy and punching a guy around the ring. And I think Tommaso could get away with that, and throw in a DDT, throw in a vicious slingshot. Like, he can mix in his viciousness in with a punch and kick style, and not have to throw his body around, because him and Gargano, their necks could only take so much, and they've taken a lot, just the matches they've had with each other, and you don't want to see those guys hurt themselves in a draws fashion, so to speak. That would definitely not be good for TV, because it would probably happen with both these guys hurting themselves in the ring and on a pay-per-view more than likely. But we go backstage. We've got Austin Theory making fun of Bronson Reed, and then Reed just slaps the crap out of Austin Theory. Now, Austin Theory is, I guess, making his way back down to NXT from the main roster, and it looks like we might have a feud boiling over here. What did you think of that slap from Bronson Reed?
Again, I thought this was exactly what. So here's the thing I'll say, Bronson Reed is the little things that a little bit I've seen of him, I've been impressed with, but I also feel like he kind of lacks that extra bit of intensity. And this was a good way to show that, he has a little bit more intensity here. So I thought this was good, because I thought, what's Bronson going to do? Is he just going to, cut a promo on him and then have a stare off, which I thought was, not going to be an effective way to get him over. But when he just turned right around and slapped him, I thought it was a good opportunity to show that Bronson Reed maybe has a little bit more intensity than we've given him credit for. And perhaps maybe after coming off a loss of not capturing the NXT North American Championship, we're going to see a little bit more intensity from Bronson Reed. A lot of intensity on this show. I'm starting to pick up a theme here. This was the intense show, but I'm okay. I'm always okay with intensity because there's different ways you can show it. This was different than what we saw from Tommaso being, whooping ass on Jake Atlas. This was just a simple slap, but it was effective to show that Bronson Reed isn't going to take shit from nobody. And Austin Theory has his work cut out from him. And I'm excited to see Austin Theory. I've only heard about him. I haven't seen his work. So I'm excited to see what he brings to the table as well.
Well, speaking of intense, we had one of the more intense moments of the night as we have Mia Yim comes out to face Mercedes Martinez, but Robert Stone and Aaliyah come out on stage, and as Robert Stone is cutting a promo, he just all of a sudden hits the floor and is being run over by Shotzi Blackheart's tank. Now, she got full coverage of Robert Stone here with the tank. I think this was great. Half his body was covered when they kind of peel back the image. And Shotzi Blackheart decides that she's going to take this shot against Mia Yim. This was a fun little match. Now, I know there's a lot of people out there that don't like Shotzi's howling. Like they feel like that she could tone down the howling a little bit, with her character. It's kind of like when we watched Warhorse on AEW, and I felt like he was doing the headbanging a little too much after every little move that he did. I feel like people kind of feel like she's doing the howling. Now you're over here shaking your head, Dr. Ted.
Well,
so I feel like
I'm not saying it can't cross that line. I guess it hasn't crossed for me yet. And it's all about when and how you do it. And maybe, I'll be honest here, is a lot of times while I'm watching the show, I'm also multitasking with other things. So maybe I just didn't pick up on it as much. But there's also something to be said for having your trademark in something that people are going to, kind of like Ric Flair had his woo. And it's unfortunate that we don't have a crowd right now, but I have to imagine if there was arenas full of little kids, they'd probably be doing the howl right back with her, and she'd be getting progressively more over with it, which you're right. There's probably a bunch of people watching, like probably more older fans that, aren't as into the more kid-friendly product and the cheekiness of it, I guess. And I can see where that can get grating for some people, but at the end of the day, I see dollar signs on Shotzi Blackheart, especially to selling to kids. And to me, it's just a shame we don't have arenas full right now. But I also feel like once we're able to hopefully get back to that soon enough, where with actual fans, that's going to at least to some degree get over. Now it might be kind of like what we saw, that not by any means saying that she's the next John Cena, but as far as getting that type of reaction where you have, the kids are cheering for her, but then you have the older, 18 to 35 mil demographic that is like, we're tired of this shit. This is too cheesy for us, which that's okay with. A reaction is a reaction, and I'm totally fine with that. So that being said, sure, as long as she's doing it at the right moments and not howling while she's, selling, because I think that would be ridiculous. But, if she's on top and otherwise, that's her doing her thing and getting in her groove, and she's otherwise not in a compromising position, then I think it's fine.
WWE, I've got a merchandise pitch for you here. You have to sell a line of Robert Stone, Shotzi Blackheart, Mercedes Martinez, Aaliyah toys, and each one of them comes with a piece of the tank. You build the tank, and then you can run over Robert Stone with the tank, or just have the tank come and you with the Robert Stone, or do like the battle pack where it's Shotzi Blackheart, Robert Stone with the tank as like the item that they have in the middle, and then you can just recreate running Robert Stone over with the tank whenever you want. And they, like you said, she has merchandise written. I mean, there's RC car tank. There's her character with the tank, the helmets that you sell, the helmets with a green wig glued on the inside for kids when you finally have fans back in the arena that they go out and buy. I mean, like I went to a house show one time, Ted, and I literally was in line at the merch table just to buy 2 autographs for 45 minutes. That's how long these lines were at these live shows. So, I mean, you could sell out Shotzi Blackheart $50-$60 to sell an RC tank would make a killing at a merch table at a WWE show. But she goes over with double sentons. They really like Shotzi Blackheart. They're pushing her. Good solid match with Mia Yim. Is there anything that you saw in this match, Dr. Ted, that you wanted to talk about? Anything? I mean, this was like I said, I felt like this was a really, really good match. Both these ladies worked really well. I mean, Mia Yim is one of the more technical, experienced, seasoned veterans, so she definitely could kind of carry the two of them if needed be in this match.
And that's the thing. This was a good example of they took their time to put their shit over and put each other over. Baby matches can be hard, and that's where sometimes you don't necessarily have the same amount of emotional drama because you're not, cheering for one side versus the other. You're more just kind of, analyzing, two athletes going at it. And so in that sense, I thought, especially since it being a harder match to work, I thought they did a good job here. I thought they helped elevate each other. And, Mia Yim, I could get the sense that she was kind of taking the lead on this match. And I thought she did a good job leading it. And ultimately it ended up being a good little piece of business. And anytime we have an excuse to run over Robert Stone with a tank, I'm always going to be all about that. I'm going to say it again. I want to see eventually it come to where he's literally coming out in a full body brace just because of all the times he's been ran over with the tank. I really want to see that happen because I think he could play it off amazingly. Coming out in the wheelchair, he gets dumped. There's just so much you could do with that. And maybe they will eventually go down that path, but I love that part as well. And I thought this was a good little piece of business.
Well, we go to the ring now, and we have William Regal wishing Karrion Kross the best, but then he kind of teases off that it's going to be a four-way match with all NXT title holders. And I got excited, Ted, because I was like, oh man, they're going to bring Kevin Owens back. They're going to have Sami Zayn come back. Like, we're going to see Seth Rollins come back. Like, no, it's Johnny Gargano, Tommaso Ciampa, Finn Balor, and Adam Cole all vying for the NXT title next on a special Tuesday edition in a fatal four-way 60-minute Iron Man match. I've never seen a four-way Iron Man match like this before. It's going to be interesting how they kind of book quick pins on each other and how guys get the score. If it's just going to be one pin that wins it all. They usually have some kind of weird booking with these Iron Man matches where somebody gets a quick pinfall just to kind of put a little bit of heat on everybody else in the rest of the match. What are your thoughts on the four men vying for this title and the way that Regal kind of explained how we're going to go about having these four guys in there? Do you feel like they should have put some fresh blood in there? Maybe, with the opportunity that they gave everyone for the North American title, do you feel like they should have thrown some new fresh blood in there, or do you like these four guys?
Well, it's all about the reasoning. And so just to play devil's advocate, okay, who of what fresh blood necessarily did you have in mind as far as throwing in there?
Yeah. Not really. Oh, man, that's actually a tough one. I mean, other than maybe Dijakovic.
Okay. But then here's my next question. Why does he get a shot over other guys?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I don't really have a reasoning behind it. Like, it's just kind of somebody new.
And that's a fair thing to say, saying, what about someone new? But I think given the situation and really they're wanting to turn this around quick versus prolonging it because, how many tournaments I feel like can wrestling have? So this was a quick way to turn it around. And at least Regal gave rationale for each competitor in the match. Cause I had actually originally read the list of competitors before seeing the show. And my first grievance was actually going to be about Johnny Gargano because we just saw him lose in the ladder match. So how come he's getting shotgun in front of the other guys? But at least Regal had the justification is, he's the first NXT Grand Slam champion. And as such, we're bringing him into this match. So at least appreciated that he gave a rationale for it versus he's just randomly shotgun in front of other people. As far as the match itself, I'll be honest, I feel bad for the guys in this match because I feel like that it is a difficult match to be in. It's one thing to have a four-way match, but to be able to go 60 minutes and keep it compelling and drama-filled versus going from this spot to this spot. Now you're going to be out cold. Now this, I feel like it's a near impossible order. And I think it's one of those things where we're going to see moments of that match being pulled out for clips and they'll be great. But as far as being able to tell a cohesive story from A to B with four guys for 60 minutes, I just don't. And again, if I'm wrong, I will say next week I'm wrong. But I feel like there's going to be parts of it that aren't going to necessarily flow, and it's just simply because it's so hard to tell a cohesive story. Now, two guys, you could have them go 2 hours, And with the right guys, I mean, that would be a difficult order too. But I would feel like 2 guys going 2 hours would be a much easier, compelling story to take compared to 4 guys going 1 hour, because that's just a long time to be able to tell that kind of story. Now, what I personally would maybe a different spin on it though, maybe say, and this obviously it's not going to happen because they're going with the 60-minute, is say, okay, we're going to put you guys in there. The first man to get a pinfall or submission on either 2 or 3 of the other guys, I'd say maybe 3, is the champion. And then you kind of have over this course of a video who's going to be able to get the pin or submission on everyone. And that could still be a prolonged match, but then it's a little more exciting to see, who's getting fall and who. And I actually would have just made it a triple threat versus a 4-way on that, and say the first man to get a fall on the other 2 is the champion. So that way they definitively beat 2 other opponents that were otherwise top contenders for that title. And the whole time you're thinking who's going to get the 2 other falls on the other people. That being said, again, I will reserve my judgment for seeing the match next week. I just feel like from a story mechanism standpoint, it's going to be a really hard match to put together.
Yeah. And I do feel like, with what they're setting up with Gargano and Candice LeRae, this may get shotgunned that if he wins this title, then they kind of got to push her up to get her that women's NXT title. But it doesn't look like they can really shotgun her anytime soon, because it seems like they're putting her in a feud with Tegan Nox with their whole friendship thing, which last week was very confusing for me because they kind of had like a little bit of a match or a little bit of a tease. And then this week they had kind of the vignette with Candice LeRae talking about like her friendship with Tegan Nox, kind of explaining that. But I thought too that this would be the time that you put the title on Gargano, possibly get Candice LeRae that women's title, and then you have Scarlett and Kross kind of going at them whenever they come back. Now, yeah, it's Scarlett not necessarily going for the title because she's not really been seen as a women's wrestler here in NXT, but you just kind of have that wife-husband dynamic thing where Scarlett can go after Candice and do some mystical things to her, when you want to finally bring Kross back. But we can talk about that next week after this match if that's the potential that happens, or we'll see who wins, because I don't see them putting the title back on Cole. And then it's either Balor, Ciampa, or Gargano. And I agree with you. I feel like shotgunning Ciampa would just be too early for him to come back, and he's all of a sudden right back in that championship title picture.
What the potential, now this would be an interesting turn. This is where they could maybe get themselves out of, because I still feel like the 4-way 60-minute is so hard to do. What if, let's say, before the bell even rings, we saw what happened this week with Tommaso, with him just killing Jake Atlas. What if he were to go after, say, we think he's going to go after Gargano based on their history, which was another part I thought was weird, because for some reason I thought like they weren't allowed to have matches together anymore or something.
Yeah, I don't think so.
But maybe it's a singles match. I don't know. But either way, say if Tommaso were to go after, say, Finn Balor before the match and do similar thing what he did to Atlas, and Balor's out of the match, and Regal comes out and says, you know what, you're disqualified, and then Tommaso tries to get back in the ring, says no, it's not a fall, you're out of this match. That's not, then that's and then. Now, this is where I'm always trying to find a way to work Regal into it. That's where I'd have him attack Regal, and then Tommaso, and Regal being between those guys, Tommaso could spin off with Balor or Regal at that point. And then now it's Gargano and Cole, but then again, you have 2 heels going for 60 minutes, and that makes it hard. So that's where literally I'll think through things and then realize, okay, we can't do that. But I think you could maybe even spin, a different way. And that's where, again, if it wasn't for that stipulation with Gargano, I would say he's the guy that Tommaso takes out and they're eliminated. Then you have Finn Balor and Cole go an hour. I think that would be fine. And they could, certainly kill it in a 60-minute Iron Man match. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm sure at some point they'll have some kind of thing where either Undisputed Era will come out and beat everyone else and go ahead and give them a DQ, or, they'll come up with some different ways. But again, I still feel it's hard for 60 minutes with 4 guys to tell a coherent story from A to Z. It's hard enough anyway, just in a traditional fatal 4-way match, to be able to tell a coherent story, much less do it for 60 minutes. So we will see, but it will be interesting to see who they go with. I agree. I think Tommaso, it's too early. Finn Balor wouldn't be bad though, because he has the recognition, and he's someone that I feel like whenever we finally are ready to see Kross come back, he could come in and kill him, and that would be a very effective. Adam Cole, like we said, doesn't necessarily need it anymore. And Gargano, I think it's a little early for his journey. That being said, he has explained wanted to be the first couple of NXT. So I think it's either going to be Balor or Gargano for next week, but we will see what happens.
Well, we go into a Cruiserweight championship match, Santos Escobar versus Isaiah Swerve Scott. Now, Ted, going into this, Swerve's got that win. This is a straight up match. In my mind, I was thinking that, Santos Escobar is gonna lose this match. Like Swerve is gonna win. It's a straight up wrestling match. But I also kind of felt like we were going to see a little bit of interference from his cronies. Of course, Joaquin and Mendoza are going to get in there and do their thing. But I was surprised because this match ended not the way that I thought it was going to end. Of course, we got Breezango coming out to be the equalizers once Joaquin and Mendoza got involved. But I've never seen this finish before, Dr. Ted. Right as Santos, that dirty heel that he is, he knew that he couldn't beat Scott. He knew that he couldn't win straight up, especially without his cronies. And he was very close to losing this match. He rolls out of the ring. He grabs what seems to be a weighted lucha mask from under the ring. He headbutts Scott, knocks him out cold, and he's able to get the pin and retain his Cruiserweight championship here. What did you think of this match and the finish going into it? Because I like the idea of this weighted lucha mask. He threw it on and then he just headbutted him with it, and nobody noticed a thing.
I would say the only part that I say of this match that I didn't care for was when they buried the Swerve Scott finish kick move. When I always hate when they bury moves, and so that was the one part. Otherwise, I think it was a perfect example of how you could have an exciting, more athletic style match and still put shit over, because they still took their time with everything else, and that I really appreciated. I thought overall this was a good match, and I really liked the mask aspect. Although it's interesting, because going forward, is he only going to roll out and use the mask when the ref's distracted? Because that's going to be a hard way. You got to find all kinds of ways then to keep distracting the referee to put on a mask, and it seems a little convoluted. However, I actually like the idea of him coming out and saying, you know what, I feel like I do need to, at the very least, when the bell rings, be back in my roots and put the mask on. And then at this point, as audience viewers, we know that mask is loaded, and at any point, if he hits that headbutt, it's lights out for the contender. And that would be a great way to I think, continue to build heat and give him something that's a little different than your traditional weapon, in that we all know the mask, if he hits that headbutt, it's over. So that being said, it'll be interesting to see if he only, finds ways to pull it out, which I think, again, there's only so many ways I feel you can do that, versus if he starts to use the mask in the ring to show his respect to, to his culture or what have you, based on what they've already kind of educated the audience of what their MO is.
Well, they didn't even talk about it on commentary, about like the potential of it being a loaded mask or it having the weight to it. They were like, oh, he put on a mask, and then they didn't really talk about it. And then he didn't really try to hide it. I mean, he was somewhat hiding it behind the title and everything after he was celebrating, but it was very weird because commentary didn't really
are right. And actually, now that you say that, yeah, because they
make a big deal.
And that's where they can't outright say, is something in that mask, but at least allude to it, like he had him with the mask and he's out cold. Was something in that mask? You know what I mean? Like they more ask questions about it versus saying it outright. And
yeah, because they showed him fixed, like when he puts the mask on, he's fiddling with something. So clearly there's something with the mask, and for him to, Swerve was in the match the whole entire time, and the one headbutt and Swerve's out. That it's the casual fan, anyone at home that's watching the product, even for the first time, would be like, there's something not right about this. And normally commentary is up on top of those types of things to say that, but they didn't. So maybe like you said, the mask is going to be something that gets worked into the feud, or maybe it's into his character where he knows he can get away with it. Because who's going to think to check a wrestler's mask, for it to be weighted or anything like that? I mean, as a ref, would you would you check a person's mask like a luchador? I mean, or is that what you guys, because you see them when they
No,
check the
I
boots, they
wouldn't.
check the tights. You're not going to check a
Right.
wrestler's mask.
Yeah. Now, eventually, people are going to start having grievances, and then that's where they can confront them and tell them to take off the mask, and that's where he can argue, it's part of my culture. You know what I mean? I think right now in 2020, where people are, getting very upset over cultures being, taken advantage of, that I think that's where, you can kind of skew the line between reality of what's going on in society and the world of wrestling, and talk about how, they're telling him he has to dress a certain way or he has to look a certain way in order for him to wrestle. You know what I mean? I think he can play up that, and that's where they can be like, all right, fine, you can wear the mask, but we don't want to see you making, any forehead contact. And then that's easy, because anytime, you can have something as simple as the ref goes to split him up and he just headbutts him. That's it. The ref didn't see it. But that's a much easier trouble, even if the ref knows it and they, for some reason, kind of like when D'Lo Brown for a while was wearing the chest plate.
Yeah.
They were trying to get him to take it off, and it was to protect him. And, and that was just a different way for him to continue to get heat. And so I think this is a unique and different way that he could play that up, and I actually like the idea of that.
Yeah, there were a lot of fans that took away the kayfabe about Roman Reigns when he wore the vest. They were always like, I mean, he's wearing a vest. Simple punches and things like that aren't going to hurt him. Like, they tried to make a lot of those like smart comments about Roman Reigns because a lot of people didn't like him and his whole look and everything. But they also said the same thing about his vest being a weapon in the ring. So we have a couple of backstage vignettes. We got Gargano saying that he's going to show everyone next week that he is the Iron Man of NXT. And we've got Finn Balor says that he isn't a cornerstone of NXT. He is the centerpiece. I mean, these two guys couldn't I like these little promos that they've got, because then they have Adam Cole with one later on in the evening after this Drake Maverick match. But they're really setting it up they're really setting the stage for this match. Like I said, I'm excited for Super Tuesday. I don't know why they're running on Tuesday. Is there a?
Oh, really? I didn't even.
Yeah,
I just flew over my head. I'm glad you told me. So they're doing NXT on Tuesday next week.
Yeah, that's it. So the Iron Man match is going to be on this special Super Tuesday edition of NXT. I'm assuming it's going to be on USA and everything, just on Tuesday at a different. So probably the same time slot, just on a different day. We've got Drake Maverick versus Kyle O'Reilly here. This is a blow-off match because, Drake Maverick basically challenged one of the Undisputed Era members to a match due to the beatdown that he suffered last week. We get this is a fun little match. We saw the intensity from Drake Maverick, but Kyle O'Reilly's just too much for Drake Maverick, and he gets him in a knee bar, and vicious. He gets both the legs, really makes Maverick tap out. And then after the match, Undisputed Era just begins to attack Maverick again, but Killian Dane hits the ring, makes the save. We've got Killian Dane and Maverick kind of like we talked about earlier, looking like they're gonna be friends, but Dane just destroys Maverick with a clothesline to end that segment. Did you enjoy this little bit of fun here? Do you like where they're going kind of with Undisputed and Drake Maverick and Killian Dane at this point in time? Is this a feud that you want to see? Do you want to see more of this? Where do you feel like they're going to go with Drake Maverick, Killian Dane, and the Undisputed Era?
It's interesting. I feel like, again, I like the idea of Drake Maverick. I like him trying to keep going after people. Here's the thing is, I don't think necessarily you have to keep spinning off Undisputed Era here. You can, but to me, the story is about Killian Dane and Drake Maverick, really about Drake Maverick. He's the, consummate babyface. He'll take on all comers. And even when the numbers are against him, he doesn't care. Even if someone's twice his size, he doesn't care. So I personally would like to see them spin off. And this, again, it could lead to something with Undisputed Era, but to me, it's all about Killian Dane and Drake Maverick. And you have Drake Maverick now. Yeah, who do you think you are? You would clothesline me, and then have him kill him again, and then make it an ongoing thing where Drake Maverick keeps coming back every week to try to dress Killian Dane, and Killian Dane keeps killing him, and then finally, Killian Dane's enough. I'm tired of this, man. What's wrong with you? And then end up having that mutual respect. And then that's when they can come together and say, you know what, we have some unfinished business with the Undisputed Era. And then that's when they can come back as a tag team and I think have a fun little feud. And it's your old, opposites attract kind of deal. But I also think with, Drake Maverick having the fire behind him and having the brute force of Killian Dane at his side, I think they would be a entertaining little duo to see. And it would give a bit more life to Drake Maverick here, similar to why I thought you said turning him heel, like we talked about earlier in the show, was also a good idea, because it's just something else that gives him a little more life, because it seems like since he's come back, other than, coming and being the fiery baby face, what's the next step? And I think maybe finding an alliance with someone on the roster, someone that's a little bigger and can help be a little more muscle to help him when he's in these compromising situations is a good way to do that. But obviously he's not quite, Killian Dane's not quite ready to make that happen yet. And I think that's even better, because any way you can stretch that out, then when they finally do come back together as a tag team, that relationship is much more meaningful. And that's going to help get them a lot more over, because we saw what it took for them to finally come together in the end.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I like that idea. I'm excited to see what we got going on here. But we go to our final match, the main event of the evening, which this feud is really turning up the heat. Dr. Ted, I feel like Raquel is really starting to step into her own, especially not having been on TV. Like, we saw her that first week and then she wasn't on TV. And then these last 2 weeks, she's really made an impact for herself. I mean, I'm really excited to finally see her and Rhea Ripley when they finally go toe to toe with each other. I mean, just seeing those two in the ring tonight when they finally got their hands on each other was great. But we've got Io Shirai and Rhea Ripley versus Dakota Kai and Raquel Gonzalez. Kai and Rhea Ripley start the match. I felt like they were going to start this match with Io Shirai and Dakota Kai just to kind of save that you get that moment where the two big giants get in the ring and they finally face off against each other. But no, Rhea Ripley wanted to start the match, and then she quickly gets Dakota Kai to tag Raquel Gonzalez in. And so, I mean, this is a fun little match, a lot of back and forth. We actually see Dakota Kai and Raquel Gonzalez go over. Gonzalez pins Rhea Ripley for the win. And this is a fun little match. And we were establishing more heat with Dakota Kai and Raquel Gonzalez. I mean, really, we're establishing Raquel Gonzalez as just a beast, and somebody that even Rhea Ripley is going to have a hard time really fighting with. I mean, eventually Rhea Ripley's probably going to dig deep and overcome Raquel Gonzalez, but for right now, her and Dakota Kai look like an unstoppable force. And if Raquel's able to get her hands on Io Shirai, you could see a new NXT champion here on the horizon.
Absolutely. And although once again, it made me sad, we did not see a hot tag here. But we did see a blind tag, which I haven't seen in a while, and not every match needs a blind tag, but it is a tag team, I guess, device that teams use to help further a story or create drama. And I thought the blind tag here worked out really well, because that allowed Mercedes Martinez to run in on Rhea Ripley here. And I thought that was a good use of the blind tag, because it then allowed that story between Mercedes and Rhea to continue and help spin her back off into that, because I was wondering how they were going to balance it out, if they were really going to spin off, with Raquel and Rhea, and with Dakota and Io. But instead, based on this, I have to only assume that before Rhea can really continue on in her quest for the NXT title, she's got to take care of Mercedes Martinez first.
That's true. And could you see them doing a three-way match with Mercedes, Raquel, and Rhea down the road at some point in time? Where, I mean, if they did that match, I just kind of booked myself into this. I would see maybe Raquel and Mercedes more so teaming up in that match to really just beat down Rhea, because they both just have this hatred for Rhea more so than them trying to take each other out. I mean, yeah, the goal is to win, but that first half of the match would probably just be them just taking out Rhea.
The only thing is, I feel like it splits the spotlight, because part of Raquel's, she's the heater for Dakota Kai. And so I think putting in her, when you have Dakota Kai on the outside, and then you also have Robert Stone's group on the outside, I feel like that gets a little convoluted. But now that my wheels are turning, here's the thing that I wonder, because we are seeing a little bit of crossover with business with the Stone brand. What if, because we always see Stone seems to get the short end of the stick, we have Dakota Kai kind of take the reign, decides to join the Stone brand with Raquel Gonzalez, which is great. Stone's happy, but then she ends up kicking Stone out of the brand and takes that heat as the main role there, because then you have this all women's stable, which really we haven't seen in a while, and that's a good way to continue to put heat on Dakota Kai, especially coming after a loss with the championship. That puts her right back in a top tier spotlight. Not only does she have the muscle of Raquel behind her, she has the badass Mercedes Martinez, and then I like you can play up the character situation of what's Aaliyah going to do now. Is she going to stick with this group of badass women, or is she going to go with Robert Stone? And that's a nice little piece of drama there too. So I might do something like that, like to that point, if you were going to lead to a triple threat. But even then, at that point, they would negate it, because now we have Mercedes and Raquel on the same team. But I also think that's a bit more interesting to have something like that happen, because Robert Stone, as soon as he gets on top somewhere, it always seems like the rug gets swept out from underneath of him. And I think that would be a cool way to do that and continue that game or story that he's been telling as a character, while putting more heat on a heel of Dakota Kai and having Mercedes and Raquel be her brute force behind her.
I like that. Where Robert Stone gets high up there, there's always a tank ready to just take him out at the knees. Now there was one thing that we didn't talk about tonight. We had a special guest commentator, Wade Barrett. I think I heard that he was back on a one-night contract to come back and work, but they're really trying to get him to come back. I like Wade Barrett on commentary. I felt like he added something. I mean, especially like when Maverick was out there, he added a little bit of something there with the commentary. I mean, you've got a guy that he could come off of commentary and insert himself in the ring.
Yeah.
Now,
and not to mention helping to produce matches too, just being backstage. I mean, Wade Barrett, Stu Sanders, he's a hell of a hand. I had the good fortune to work or at least a handful of matches with him and Paul Burchill back at OVW, just to help as enhancement talent myself, to help put him over. And they were always total pros, really easy to work with. They understood, the business that needed to be done. They were always safe to work with. And so both Paul and as we're talking about Wade Barrett, I think is a really good get for the roster. I think even if he's just in a helping role, just on commentary and being an influence backstage on the guys and gals down there, I think it's still a win for the NXT roster.
Yeah, he's always been great. I mean, even in his general manager roles and just the things that he did on the main roster, I think for a guy just to come and lend his talents down in developmental, I mean, not even trying to go and be a main roster star, like even if he just pops in and does a few matches here and there on NXT just to train and develop these guys. I mean, think about the numbers you could pop knowing that Wade Barrett's going to wrestle on a Wednesday. You might be able to pull some eyes away from the AEW watchers and stuff just to have some bad news on your screen again. But that's it. That's it for the show. That's everything. Yeah, that's it. So we're gonna have the Iron Man match on Tuesday. I think that's really the only other match that they announced going into Tuesday. But yeah, so we've got a special episode for that. We'll still probably record on Thursday mornings and put this show out for you guys. Yeah, Ted, do you have anything else that you want to add for the show? We did kind of stooge off the homework again. Let's remind the listeners about the homework.
Yeah. For those that want to participate, our homework, you can turn it into Next Level Wrestling Review at gmail.com. But it's simply, we saw tonight Karrion Kross had to relinquish the NXT Championship. So the homework is, how do we keep him, assuming he's out at least 6 months, how do you keep him relevant? And then how do you bring him back over the next 6 months when he's finally ready to return? How do we bring him back? But most importantly, how do you keep him relevant? So I'm curious to hear your thoughts. I have one particular idea, but I'm going to wait till next week to share it. And I have a feeling perhaps yourself, Colin, or maybe one of our listeners might have a similar idea, because really it's a similar version of something that has been done in the past, and that's all. It's the only hint I will give you all. But I have a different thought as far as how they could spin it a little differently. So that being said, be creative. Let us know, how do you keep Karrion Kross relevant? How do you bring him back? very much look forward to hearing your thoughts and responses. Again, you can send those to nextlevelwrestlingreview@gmail.com.
Now, I did have one fun little question for you here. I sent this to Hameen. Now, being an improv guy, could you do like a wrestling improv show where, like, let's say, like it's like a stable of guys, like let's say it's you and Ben, or guys that have been trained in improv, but you're also trained in the art of professional wrestling, and like let's say all right, we've got these two competitors. Let's get characters for competitor A and a character for competitor B, and then like character A, you guys then go into the ring and have a match portraying said characters. Like it might be a little convoluted, but like let's say like character A is a banana, and then like character B is a nervous grandma, and then like you just have to, like, a banana has a match with a nervous grandma and you just have to sell it in the ring like that. Is that something that you could do, or like a Styles replay wrestling match?
It all comes down to knowing your audience. It would be a certain niche audience, and I think you could do that in, say, a city where you have more intellectual people that understand what improv really means, and are more smart into what to wrestling, and not your traditional wrestling fan. But I think certainly that something like that would be a lot of fun. I'd be all about, if someone wants to organize that. And I'd say you probably have to hit a big shit city like Chicago or New York. And unfortunately right now it'd be hard to do, but you'd have to have the right town, the right venue, and the right crowd. But something like that I think would be a lot of fun, and it's something I think would be interesting. But again, it's all about finding that audience. But I think it's something, though, that being said, I think there are still people, around, not just in those big cities, that would be interested in doing something like on an internet pay-per-view that people could find and watch. I think that would be a lot of fun and interesting. I don't think it's something that, unfortunately, at this stage of where we're at in mainstream society, that it would have as much crossover appeal to the mainstream. But I think it certainly could have a very powerful underground, no pun intended, audience that really could have some legs to it. So that's actually not a bad idea there, Colin. I like it.
It's Styles replay, and it's like, now, Ted, I want to see your match in the style of Shakespeare.
I'm all about. I love the challenge. Me, I'm all about character work, and I'm all about trying to play up that and always challenge myself. So I like the thought and idea of that. So, like I said, if anyone wants to organize something like that, I'm down. I'm willing to help you put together the card and everything. But at least at this stage, I think it would be, again, right place, right people, right time.
Gotcha. Yeah, like you said, right now it's probably not the best. But guys, this show is over. You can go and find me at Colin Whitesong on Twitter. You can find me each and every week here at the Next Level Wrestling Review with my man beast, Dr. Ted, here. And also over at the Ridiculously Random Podcast at pwhustlenetworks.podbean.com. And just here, I produce Cage Theory. It's a great show. I really enjoy John Hartnett and Blake. Those guys, they had Pat Miletich, the first welterweight champion of the UFC. Blake interviewed him. They have that interview at the end of the show. Definitely go and check that out. I've met Pat a couple of times at a few like independent regional MMA shows, and he's always like willing to shake hands and talk to people. And Pat Miletich is a really cool dude. Definitely go and check out that show. But Dr. Ted, that's enough shilling from me. Why don't you go ahead and get us out of here?
Well, certainly. And of course, if you want to follow me, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Ted the Man Beast. Of course, you can also follow me on Facebook. And if you happen to have any business marketing needs, or you yourself are a wrestler needing some additional coaching or character development, you can also reach out to me at bookthedoctor@gmail.com. And be certainly glad to set up some time to work with you. And in the meantime, of course, you can catch me on the other Hameen Media shows, the Monday Locker Room every Monday morning, and the Impact Attack every Wednesday morning. And of course, we'll be back probably, even though they're moving up NXT, we're going to stick to our regular time here. So we'll catch you next Thursday morning for the live. And of course, you can also watch it throughout the week once it's uploaded onto Podbean or iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts, as well as our YouTube channel. And again, we're really trying to help grow our YouTube page. So if you all don't mind, if you're enjoying this content, please do us a favor and click subscribe. It really helps us out as far as growing that page and leading towards more big opportunities for Hameen Media. But with that being said, thank you all for tuning in once again. We will catch you next week on the Next Level Wrestling Review. For Colin Whitesong, I am Dr. Man Beast, Ted McNailer, and we will see you next week. All right, let me log out of the live. This is the extra stuff that you all don't get to see other than when you tune in live. If I can figure out how to